So I guess the first thing I'll do is I'll introduce myself. So my name is Vincent DeVois, and I am a senior student in Holy Family, and I've had the wonderful opportunity to collaborate with Mary Elliott in a federal work study, and she works in the lab as a lab coordinator, and we had the opportunity to work together last summer, and that is how we came upon this subject that we're going to talk about today about environmental wellness. And currently, right now, I work for a primary care agency, and I'm a direct support professional, and we provide assistance for seniors. And our goal is we're committed to keeping seniors as independent as possible in their homes, and provide care for them directly in their homes. So I'm really interested in the wellness model, or the holistic model of health, which focuses on the mind, the body, and the spirit as an integrated, coherent whole. So we treat the entire person, versus the treatment paradigm of wellness that just focuses on signs, symptoms, and disability. So what I'm interested in is awareness, education, and growth for the patients that I serve in my nursing study, and also in the care that I provide for seniors in my current job while I'm in school right now. And if Miss Elliott, I would love it if she can introduce herself, but it might be a difficult situation with hearing her through the way that we're connected here right now.
Well, let's give it a try. Okay?
Yeah, sure. I'm gonna. Hopefully, everybody can hear her a little bit.
Okay. The slides speak for themselves, but I pretty much figured out with Vince that we both have the same mindset. Years ago, I used to go walking bars and the woods with my kids when we were camping, and somehow that seemed to be such a meditative engagement. And I kind of miss doing that now as my kids are older. And working for Holy Family, though, I found it challenging. I guess that's pretty much the benefit of getting older, is that you're able to look back and put something into the present tense. So I've been a nurse for over 30 years, and in talking to Ben, we both found that we had a commonality. He's a junior nursing student at that time, but ended up happening because at the same mindset that environmental wellness, or forest bathing, which is a concept from Japan, that can help with our stresses and decrease and have healthier lives. And that's pretty much from the previous speaker, Dr. DeRosa. To be more compassionate and to find some other ways to help our patients that would be helpful, and yet we can still incorporate in our own lives to help us with the stresses we're encountering now. The next slide.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry for the back.
Okay. Yeah, so it's been such an honor to work with Miss Elliott on this project, and she does so much for our university and all the students that she encounters across the campus as well. So we're going to advance to the first slide.
The kinds of things we've been hearing from business people and workers about ways we can make this program.
I think there's some sounds like a TV in the background.
I know that we've identified a lot of the challenges with getting folks back to work after this because so much has changed. But there's
I can hear
that. One of which you talk to parents all over the country. Kids are going back to school.
Yeah, if possible, if everybody just go on mute, we should be fine.
Illness in that school, the superintendent's already saying that they're going to shut down for 2 weeks or whatever may happen. That greatly affects the parents' ability to go to work every day. So what are we doing and what are we thinking about to try to help people get back to work but stay at work especially with so much uncertainty.
Well, two thoughts on that. One is that the situation as we reopen, as we learn more about the virus, is still so fluid, changing so rapidly. This past week we passed a sad milestone as we had 100,000 deaths, but we all pick up the camera. Now, why would he do that?
Because he's sending a message. Look what he drew on his right arm. You mind if I shop?
Okay, I think we're okay now. Everybody's good? Sorry, guys, just everybody can mute, then I think we'll be okay. Okay. All right, we're okay. I think we're good now. All right. So just to go through a few goals today. So we want everyone to be able to participate in an environmental wellness practicing session, which I would love for it to allow some sharing, self-reflection, and self-discovery too. I really am excited for everyone to understand the vast array of health benefits evident within the practice of the forest bathing, and discuss how you plan to use forest bathing, depending on how much you retain from our talk, to increase awareness of environmental wellness, improving your own physical and spiritual well-being. So that's going to be really exciting for us to share that with you today. So the number one question I think everybody has is, what exactly is forest bathing? It sounds kind of like a strange term to everyone. It doesn't mean going and taking a bath in the forest, if that's what you initially thought that it meant. So it's actually a Japanese term, and Shinrin means forest, and Yoku means bath. So it's translated as forest bath. However, this isn't any kind of jogging or exercise or any kind of biking, mountain biking, which are all things that I do as well. This is actually about being in nature, just being in nature and connecting with it in a more intimate way. So humans have a biological need to connect with nature. The term biophilia you might hear, which comes from the Greek, which actually means a love of life if you translate that, because essentially the forest is like our mother, a sacred place, a gift to us from the divine. And forest bathing incorporates that into one package for everyone to heal emotionally, spiritually, physically, because all of those are connected in the practice of forest bathing. So it's about taking the forest in through the senses, through the five senses, and the whole self essentially too. So it bridges a gap between our senses and the natural world. So sight, touch, taste, smell, all of those things in the forest play a role in the forest bathing experience. And what's interesting to understand is that studies have shown that contact with nature is as vital to our health and well-being just as much as regular exercise and a healthy diet. So that's why I think that this is such an important topic that we can provide in the wellness model of health, which is what I'm interested in as a student. If anybody can hear, Miss Elliott, if you wanted to share anything with that.
Well, the only thing that I wanted to share is that I really take from the speaker that preceded us that we need to be compassionate in these stressful times. And this is one of the strategies that can help us do that with ourselves and with our students. Go to the next slide.
Okay. So just wanted to say one more thing that Shinrin-yoku developed in Japan, and the reason that it developed in Japan is because the country is about 2/3 covered in forest, actually, the entire country, and the Japanese use the word shizen, which translates to nature or naturalness. It's one of the principles of Zen aesthetics. And to the Japanese culture, they describe it as the natural world is the whole book of God, which is what I'm getting back to, how we are connected emotionally, spiritually, and physically to nature. So I will go to the next slide here, and now we're going to talk about why it's necessary. And part of that reason is that since the year 2000, they kind of pinpoint it to around 2000 that we've officially become an urban species, meaning that we've significantly in history now more than ever, even more so 20 years later from that time, we've significantly disconnected from nature in a way that has never happened before to any of our ancestors, even as far back as a short time ago, maybe 100 years. So some of the negative outcomes that have manifested from this disconnect from nature are things like anxiety, headaches, depression, mental fatigue, eye and neck strain, insomnia, frustration, irritability, loss of temper. So there's just a number of negative outcomes that have resulted from this disconnect. And one of the startling facts is that the average American, and this is actually even during a time, I mean, more so now because of the lockdown, but before the lockdown, the average American spends about 93% of their time indoors, which is just such a significant percent. And 6% of that is in cars. And that's according to the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. So not only that, we're spending about 10 hours and 39 minutes a day consuming media. So that would be our computer usage, our phone usage. And in 1984, when there was kind of a technical revolution going on at that time, and the world really started to kind of see a prevalence of computer use and tech use. And in 1984, they termed that description as technostress. So we have an increase in technostress now. I mean, you can only imagine how much further it has developed since 1984. So that's why this is so important for all of us to know, because the facts are here. The data's there, and the negative outcomes are manifested. Okay, so Miss Elliott, did you want to share anything?
There's also data but when people are in hospital settings, critical care settings, their stress goes up because, again, they're impacted by not having outside. So it's important that we still can get to these places, which is one of our strategies to improve our health and wellness. But it's pretty hard to get people to go outside when they're afraid. So in some of these things we're going to mention, and it's pretty much at the end. If it's not safe for you to go outside, then you can really do some meditative benefits with even having plants inside your house. Talk about that going forward.
Great, because that's a great point that she brought up, because we're actually going to share later too ways that you can actually bring the outside indoors, which is also a benefit, because you spend 93% of your time indoors. So bringing some of those aspects of the outdoors in could hopefully lessen that percentage in a resulting way. So we're going to go to the next slide, and this is a really interesting study. So the original study in 1989, they looked at ways that plants would clean the air in space stations. So they took the plants up with them into space, and they had them in the space stations, and they measured what the plants would do to the air quality. So there's a number of pollutants that are indoors in your house. There's actually more pollutants indoors in your house than there are outdoors, specifically because they're indoors is mainly a closed system, so that has a lot to do with it. And then there's toxic chemicals found in paints, different types of paints in your house that are on your walls, fabrics, cigarette smoke if you have anybody that smokes indoors in your house. So NASA actually came up with a list of plants. It's a top 10 list. I think there may be a little more than that on this list here that were the best air purifying plants. And these are all easy to maintain. They're easy to find. You can find them at local garden centers, pretty much all across the nation. So they're not hard to find. And they are air purifiers. They're known air purifiers, and they will raise the level of oxygen in your house, and they will remove toxins and chemicals from your air quality, and they act essentially like sponges. So they pull in all these toxins into their system, and they basically excrete it almost as a waste product. Similar to how we digest food, the plants are able to do that with the pollutants, which is really incredible. It's such an interesting thing, and it's such a spiritual connection too, to take care of the plants, to watch the plants grow, and it's just a wonderful way, an easy way to improve the air quality in your home. Miss Elliott, you want to share anything about that?
That's pretty good, Vince. I think you gave a nice overview of what I'm doing, bringing plants inside.
Okay, all right, I'll move on. Sure. All right, so this here, I love this picture because it's such an interesting picture, the way that they have it here. It's very dimensional. So this is a natural killer cell. So one of the ways that the healthcare professionals measure the way that your immune system is functioning is they look at the overall activity of these natural killer cells. So it's a type of white blood cell that essentially attacks and kills unwanted cells. So it attacks cells that are infected with, say, a virus, cells that are tumor cells, abnormal cancer cells. These cells actually go in there and they naturally attack and kill those abnormal cells. So your natural killer cell counts can be measured. And in a forest bathing study that they did, they found that just after 3 days and 2 nights in the forest, the natural killer cell count activity went up from 17.3% to 26.5%. And that's just after 3 days of being in the forest. So you can imagine what a daily practice, a weekly practice, a monthly practice, year after year in the forest could do to these natural killer cell counts. And, we learned in geriatrics courses and things like that there were actually less cancers in previous generations than ours. So is there a correlation there? Maybe. Maybe that data could be explored more. But raising the natural killer cell count can only have a benefit. And that is really fascinating, that simple, regular walks in the forest can increase the percentage of that activity so drastically in a short amount of time. And Sully, you have anything you want to say?
When people have cardiac events, or they have surviving, I think it's an issue. The plan with the nursing that the patient exercises, find positive meditation. So it definitely fits in with that.
Great, and that's why they're so important. It's so important to keep this cell count high in our bodies, especially now with everything going on. It's super important to keep these cell counts high. So now we're going to go to negative ions. And negative ions, if you've never heard of them, they're particles in the air, and they could be positively charged or negatively charged. In this case, they're a negatively charged ion, and they have energizing and refreshing effects that help increase mental clarity and sense of well-being. So they're particularly abundant in certain areas, so near waterfalls, rivers, streams. Immediately, if you're near a river or stream, you can smell and feel the energy shift. I mean, I don't. If you go down the shore, you're near the ocean, you can immediately sense an energy shift. I think that's a universal experience. So the negative ions are particularly abundant. So for example, the concentration of ions near a waterfall may be 100,000 per cubic centimeter. And then in your house, in an office setting, the negative ion concentration may only be 100 negative ions per cubic centimeter. So you could see how big of a difference there between 100 to 100,000 near a waterfall versus in your house. So one of the first studies done, one of the early studies done on negative ion therapy was actually in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia, Frankfurt Hospital, and PA Grad Hospital. They looked at negative ion therapy for hay fever and bronchial asthma, and they found that 63% of people either had partial or complete relief from their symptoms just from negative ion therapy. So, yes, one of the ways to do that is to go walk along a stream trail. There's plenty of stream trails out there. That's one way to get a boost in negative ions. Also, Himalayan salt therapies and lamps, indoor desk fountains, and indoor plants, and even taking a shower as a way to up the negative ion concentration in your environment. They regulate cortisol levels, which is the stress hormone that plays a key role in the way that the body responds to stress. So if that level's high, you're going to have more stress. Blood is purified by increasing blood to alkaline when the amount of negative ions in the blood is increased. So the function of the cell is activated, and it speeds up the cellular function and metabolism. And the ions are also powerful antioxidants, protecting us from harmful bacteria and free radicals. So that's a snapshot of just some of the basic health benefits from negative ions. And in this PowerPoint, you can look into a little more detail and how those mechanisms work too. So, Miss Elliott, if you want to chime in.
That's right. And the statistics pretty much case to case. I appreciate it. Excellent, please.
Sure. Okay, so this is hinoki oil. So hinoki oil comes from the hinoki Japanese cypress. It's a type of tree, and the oil, the aromas of the oil actually provide a relaxing, calming, and grounding effect. And hinoki is actually one of the 5 trees of Kiso. And during the Edo period in Japan, when the samurai were the rulers, so that's from the 1600s to roughly the mid-1800s, the wood was so valuable that the common person wasn't even able to cut down these trees and use the wood. The Shinto shrines in Japan are actually built of hinoki wood. So the wood actually provides a bridge to connect with the spiritual world and facilitates communication with the transcendent. So it has a nervous calming effect and also a spiritual significance. And hinoki oil releases phytoncides, and phytoncides are organic compounds that come from plants. And the studies concluded that exposure to concentrations of phytoncides, once again, increases our number of natural killer cells and their activity. And they also found from a study of Japanese men that when they diffused the hinoki oils into their environment, they actually slept better. They concluded that they had better quality sleep when hinoki oils were diffused. So these are really easy to do. There's hinoki bonsai trees that you can have. I'm a bonsai caretaker myself. But you can find these oils on Amazon at like a reliable price, a fair price, and you could buy oil diffusers pretty much in any big box retailer. And hinoki is just one example, and there's another list as well. Miss Elliott, is that sounding pretty good to you?
Yeah, the other thing is family. What happened was we actually had the computer send during the presentation, so we had that reality to that.
Yeah, which was thanks, Miss Elliott. It was great because we were able to actually have a diffuser in during the presentation, so we were able to have everyone experience that in a direct way, which was great. So this is interesting. So these are called fractal patterns. So these are patterns that occur in nature, and they actually have a mathematical significance, which is really interesting. They're sometimes referred to as the fingerprint of God. To the left, the grid there is known as the Fibonacci sequence or the golden ratio. A lot of buildings, significant buildings in history, were built upon this mathematical formula. So the interesting thing is if you overlay this Fibonacci sequence here on the grid, you can actually overlay that on patterns in nature, and it lines up with them, which is fascinating, fascinating structure in the universe. So they found that if you look at fractal patterns in nature, whatever that may be, the structure of a leaf, the bud of a flower, the extension of tree branches, that it reduces stress as much as 60%. Um, and these are patterns that you can have in your house. They could be pictures, they could be posters, and they're really easy to come by. You can find them for free online. And what they really do is they invoke a sense of wonder and awe, and a sense of the transcendent. And they really can bring you a lot of joy. So it's a really simple way to have a visual experience. And the research showed that people that watched Planet Earth DVDs or Netflix specials, they actually they were more caring and helpful after watching the Planet Earth videos. In the Swedish hospital study, they studied patients after heart surgery randomly in intensive care, and they had them view a series of pictures. So maybe a tree line across a stream, or they had a hospital view of a forested area or a landscape, and the patients recovered more smoothly. They needed less pain medication, and they suffered from less anxiety after their surgery. So that's a really interesting way that I think the holistic model of wellness can be implemented in the hospital setting too. Miss Elliott, you have anything you want to share?
No, Vince, I think that's pretty good.
Okay. So this is another really easy way to engage with the sounds of the outdoors. You can use your personal devices for this. Um, so there's plenty of free application of this, apps, applications, all kinds of things that you can do. Obviously, the best way to experience this is to go out there in the real environment and get all of the benefits, the negative ions, the air quality, the high oxygen levels. However, you can benefit from just the sounds of nature. So that would be birds, babbling brooks, rain, wind, leaves in the wind. Um, and a lot of people, I always ask them where this picture was taken, and nobody really ever knows where. So that's actually Pennypack Park. So that's a local park system in Northeast Philadelphia. And interesting to note that per square mile, the Fairmount Park system is the largest in the nation. So we have one of the best park systems in Philadelphia. We have one of the best in the nation, which is really a great way to apply some of these concepts that we're learning here today. And Miss Elliott, you were going to share, you would go, you were places you would go and practice this.
Hear me. Okay, but what ended up happening there because people are using the trails that are safe, but still you can be outside and still get the benefit.
Okay.
And I think this comes to the end of our presentation.
Yeah, so now we have some time for discussion and questions, but I just want to share one more thing before we begin with the questions. Just want to say I'm so grateful to all of the professors that have been there for me and encouraged me and helped me through the college journey and this remarkable spiritual journey of life that we're all on. And in my college experience, I've learned to transcend my own expectations, and also it's been a fascinating journey of self-discovery as well, all guided by the hand of a loving God. And I think right now, in the time that we're in, I think there's three aspects of ourselves that we need to reawaken, and I would say that would be strength, resilience, and fearlessness. Those three, I think, are the big three for me, and I think that we can all benefit from those. And when I was in I went to the 9/11 Memorial Museum last year, and they have something there called the Survivor Tree. It was one of the only trees that survived the attacks of September 11th. It was on the grounds of the Trade Center, and they actually found the tree. It was hurt pretty bad, but they restored it to health, and they replanted it on the grounds of the Trade Center Memorial. And I actually I got a leaf from that tree. I picked that leaf up. Of course, I didn't pick from the tree. I let the tree give it to me. It was underneath the tree, and I picked the leaf. And I had a really close nursing friend resin it for me, and now it's preserved. So I hope that everybody can look at this survivor tree leaf as a symbol of strength, resilience, and fearlessness. And I'm so happy to be able to present all this with you today. And this picture here was our conference. That's our group of people that were there, and that was our setup and our landscape. And they were actually able to take the plants home with them as gifts. They were giveaway gifts that we put together. And the bonsai tree in the center there with myself is a gift from Miss Elliott, and that's I'm hoping to carry through my lifetime. And because bonsai trees can actually be passed down to the next generation. I've seen 100-year-old bonsai trees, so that's a symbol of growth for me, and she's very dear to me. So it's wonderful to work with her. And here's our references if you want to look at anything. If you have any questions too, we can share that with you. And all of our references are here. There's actually a forest bathing video, which is great, which weren't able to share today because of the technical limitations. So if you have any questions about that, you can email us. And that's your references there. So we would love to open it up for questions and discussion if everybody's good with that. So I guess if
I feel like see that some people, I put some chat questions. In the one that's the other thing. We used a 20-minute forcing. Watching you actually feel it. So there's much to be said. So you can not get the.
Okay. See here we have. I was a little late to the meeting. I'm just wondering what your plans are for the future. I'm curious to know if there is a career in which you can apply this knowledge. It's a great question. So the interesting thing is that as a senior caregiver, I've actually been able to directly implement this practice of forest bathing in a more minor form, because the elderly essentially aren't able to have the same kind of mobility to go on a more strenuous, walk on trails in the woods and stuff like that. So actually, the facility that I work at, the assisted living facility, is a 100-acre ground. It's 100-acre grounds, and they have circuits, mile and a half circuits that have pathways that are heavily gardened. There's a koi pond. There's a ton of wildlife in the area. It's all planted, so I'm actually able to take the residents that I work with on these trails, and it's just such a health benefit for them. Their mental clarity is just increased so drastically. So I like to implement it in any way that I can, because it's part of my mission. It's part of my focus on the wellness model of health. I think that we need to move away from the typical Western treatment model of health. I don't agree with it. I'm not a supporter of nursing homes. I'm a supporter of integrated care facilities. So I think that God willing, there'll be a job someday that I can implement that, because geriatrics is my interest. So, is that Melissa Troup? Is that, I'm trying to see. I can't. I'm so excited that you're here today. I've missed you so much. Melissa was actually one of my nutrition professors, and I absolutely loved her class. I didn't want to leave. I was so sad when I had to leave her class. And she's just been such an awesome inspiration for me and help. She does awesome work. She does really amazing volunteer work. She has such awesome presentations and integration with her students. Interesting, fun things to do. A wealth of knowledge. She's brilliant in her mind, her spirit, and it's so awesome that you're here. I'm so excited. So her question is: now I live across the street from the woods and feel the air quality is so good. Being out in nature is especially helpful at times of uncertainty and difficulty. Without a doubt. I mean, I get out as often as I can. I get out in a variety of ways, not just one way. Mountain bike, hiking, walking. Nordic walking is actually an interesting one where you use they're kind of like ski poles. They're ski pole hiking. It's more of a full body workout engagement within the outdoor setting. Seems like a lot of people like Penny Pack. Love. Um, this entire subject has been something that I've invested a lot of my spirit in, because I think it's so important and so vital to our current situation as a society, being such an indoor species. We're just simply not made that way. I was just reading in a gardening magazine about the positive effect of negative ions on the garden and the humans who walk for it. Yeah, so the negative ions don't only help us; they actually increase the health of our plants. The studies have shown that the negative ions actually they play a role in decreasing plant disease too. So that's kind of interesting. Are you, as a student yourself, how can instructors integrate this into their curriculum? Say they teach art or something, or what resources could they just share with students? I think this could be integrated in a variety of disciplines. I don't think that it could just be implemented in healthcare. I mean, that's how I integrate it in my practice and what I study. But as a 4-year former art student, I think that, sorry, as a former 4-year art student, I've learned to integrate this in sketching formats, landscape painting, all of those things. So that's out there for art teachers, and there's a ton of resources out there. I mean, take a look at the references that we've shared, because the information's there. The Forest Bathing book, that's one of the best ones. Dr. Ki Gong, he's on there. That is definitely on here. Let me see if I can highlight it for you really quickly. Lee King, 2018 Forest Bathing. That is a fabulous place to start. If you wanna learn a little bit more about the history of this practice and how it can be used in a variety of ways. My dog makes me walk him every day. Oh, Miss Elliott, are you online with us here?
Yeah, I guess. There is one referee in the wilderness cultivation of the world, part of a reference, photograph. So you can use photographs as walking. Henry David Thoreau has beautiful, and everything that we're on the column. So it's another resource and another way.
Yes, and is that? I think I see another. Yeah. Yes. Yes, I would absolutely love to present this to the fall class. You just please let me know. You have my email and information. I would love to put this together in an in classroom format. That would be awesome. The favorite things to hike. Does forest bathing have any relation to feng shui? Feng shui is a little different. Feng shui is more about organizing things in your home facing west walls, and feng shui is an entire subject. I mean, there's like tons of literature on it. I could not ever say that I have any kind of authority to discuss any feng shui. I just know a little bit about what it is and how it works, but it is a lot different than forest bathing, because in Japan, their health facilities, they have health facilities now that have a doctor, a nurse, and mental health professionals, and a certified forest therapist. A certified forest therapist selects a specific forest that has certain aspects, so radiant heat, temperature, geography. So there's a criteria that certified forest specialists have in order to select a place as a forest bathing trail. So they're typically circuits, maybe 1.5 mile circuits, and you actually go out with a forest certified specialist on these trails. It's integrated into your health plan. So it's a little more advanced than my area of understanding. So they have professionals that do this. Thank you for this. I miss being technological. Is there any link to the full session? I think these are being recorded, if I'm not mistaken. Miss Elliott, I believe, agreed that this was recorded. So I wanted this to be recorded so that people could go back and take a look at some of the facts again and take notes if they need to, because it's a lot of information. We teach about health and wellness in our introduction to healthcare course. Sharing the video will be a great start. Yeah, please. I mean, I'm all for sharing. What good is knowledge if you keep it to yourself? That's not how knowledge should be used. Thanks, Rose and Vincent. I am so glad to you are working on behalf of better healthcare. My adult kids are already asking me about this topic. That is awesome. I think that we need to get people excited about healthcare. That's part of my mission too, is to get people. I think there's a lack of passion in society, right, across the board, especially for the younger generations. It's there isn't as much enthusiasm as I'd like to see. So I just try to be a beacon as best I can, by God's grace, by the help and love of all my professors and people that support me. I try my best to be a light, and hopefully people catch on. I love, I did my garden this year, and my mom was like, you planted too many flowers, and I said, no, wait till people drive by and they see it, and you'll have a different tune to play. And sure enough, it just brought people so much joy. Get out there, get in your gardens, plant flowers, get out in the park. I mean, get out of the house. I mean, that's a primal message here for everyone. Rose and Vincent, nicely presented. Thank you for sharing. Yes, we had an absolute blast sharing. So, I think that concludes our session, right?